Welcome, Jim O'Neill, and I am the owner of Journey Mindfulness. I am a psychotherapist and mindfulness coach, and I wrote a guide about overcoming failure, how to overcome failure in your life, and I will share it with you now. So this is on journeymindfulness.com in the blog section. And overcoming failure is a big part of how I work with people in their lives. And so we'll begin here. We all fail at various points in our lives in different areas, whether it is in relationships, sports, competition, our job or career issues, medical health issues. And these can be ours or someone else's that impact us too, financial and any other catastrophes and scenarios that you can probably think of that you've experienced as well, right? Like your personal experience is the one that you learn from the most. And in mindfulness as well, it's experiential, right? You can't just learn by reading about someone else's pain. How do you know what pain feels like if you're not experiencing it? But how foolish and narcissistic is it to think that we will be the only ones that don't fail? So I see this a lot with people around me and in life, just like in competition. This belief somehow that you are going to hit a home run every time you step up to the plate. It's not real life. And you're going to learn that sooner than later. But if you can soak some of this in, you might put yourself in a better position. So if you're reading this article or listening to it on some form of video, then perhaps consider that you were meant to, as there are no coincidences. That's a big one. And if you're experiencing some type of failure, which can be quite painful emotionally and psychologically, I present to you some ways that you can work to get through it all in a kind and loving manner. That is very important. And also, since I've had a lot of experiences with failure, I consider myself to be an expert. So I used to identify as an athlete, perhaps still do, I don't know. But what I want to share is that 2 times and at pivotal points in my life, my body failed. As in, I injured myself in competition. And my life path was diverted. The first time led me to discover a passion for traveling and experiencing the world and our common humanity, which was an invaluable experience. And I do want to give a shout out, because I'm forever grateful to John Romano for guiding me to the Kingdom of Thailand, which was a very impactful time of my life. The second time my body failed, so the first one was a broken ankle. Second time my body failed, I was considering focusing on playing a sport that would have taken me away from my life's, what ended up becoming my life's work. I didn't know this at the time, but I had just started graduate school. I was doing a counseling program. And at the time, I truly felt in my core that the universe, when I got hurt and I tore my ACL, that while athletics were what I wanted to do, I wanted to be the star athlete, that there was far more to my life and my soul's purpose. Now, I already mentioned that there are no coincidences. That may be difficult to accept for some of you reading this or watching this, but everything happens for a reason. You may not know it. It may take a while, but it does. It was very difficult to accept that I was no longer going to be a star athlete, whether that was real or just imagined in my mind. That was just simply how I identified. That part of me had to die. And in fact, years later, I now know that we die many deaths in our lives. So I'll repeat that. I now know we die many deaths in our lives. Thus, we must allow ourselves the space and give ourselves permission to grieve. This is very important. You can't skip this step. Otherwise, you'll end up being like Uncle Rico from Napoleon Dynamite living in 1982. And I've done that too, if I'm being honest. Right? As I got older, I could still do this. I can still compete. Even though at a certain point you can't. Of course, everything evolves. So when you've gone through the grief process, and you've all at some point heard of some of the stages of grief, which are interesting, and you may or may not experience all of them. There's no right or wrong way to grieve. But when you have grieved and you've allowed yourself to do that, you at some point will come to a state of acceptance. And I do wish that for anyone that has gone through this. And this is when you're at peace in your heart about the failure. It's not easy not to scare anyone, but if you're willingly putting effort into healing and want to heal, you'll find peace. But if you refuse to accept the failure, right, whatever happened, or learn from it, then this process can take a lifetime, which unfortunately I have seen, where people cannot let go of the failure. Or it eats you alive. You literally can die from not allowing yourself to grow from a mistake or a failure. You essentially wither on the vine. And that's, if you're listening to this, don't let that be you. Hopefully you can derive the wisdom from seeing other people go through things, which we'll get into a little bit more now. But mindfulness could play a role in your healing by learning to cultivate a kind, non-judgmental, and investigative curiosity about the failure. I say it often, I'm not sure people fully appreciate it, but to be kind to yourself is a challenge. It is not easy, and don't minimize or dismiss it. It is very important in being non-judgmental. We so easy in our lives write off people. I like this. I don't like that. This is good. This is bad. Practice being non-judgmental. See if you can have a neutral lens as you observe your life, as you observe your thoughts, as you observe your emotions, and be curious about it. Be actively curious. I said a kind, investigative curiosity. Be curious about, why am I feeling this? What about this failure was so bad? Is it really a failure, or is it helpful? How can I grow? What was the lesson? Ask yourself that question and spend time answering it. I would recommend spending time in a journal with it, like writing out the question. And then another strategy is, when in doubt, zoom out to see other perspectives, as many as you need to find closure. I find it helpful, if you've ever heard of to think of the blind man and the elephant, which I think is a poem, right? So it's like, if one blind man just feels the trunk of the elephant, he's going to think it's a rope. Another one feels the side of the elephant, it's going to feel like a wall. You need to have multiple perspectives, maybe even as much as 6 or 12 perspectives, to really see something in totality, to see something clearly, which we rarely do. How do you see things as they really are? We talk about mindfulness helping us get to that point where we can observe and see a situation as it is, but it's very challenging to see it from multiple perspectives. That's it. That takes work and a willingness to put in the work, right? Like in Buddhist psychology, we talk about right effort. So keep in mind that every life has a purpose, even yours. I do not say that lightly. And there are lessons we are meant to learn, grow, and expand. In fact, we choose them. Now that's a topic for another day, but how are you allowing yourself in your soul to express itself to its fullest expression in this life. That is what you're here for. So be careful not to get stuck into a victim mindset. It is very easy to do. Blaming others is a defense mechanism. It's easy to blame others for failure, especially in relationships. It wasn't me, it was the other person. Maybe you picked them, and I'm sure you had your own part in it, right? Like you're never just innocent. You may need to forgive yourself. I'll say that again because I do find people have a hard time with it. You may need to forgive yourself for your role in whatever failure took place. In an example, divorce. You may have acted inappropriately or didn't behave the way you wanted to, and I have mentioned that I am divorced, and so I can share some of those things. But at some point, when you grieve the loss of something, you may find it helpful to forgive yourself for your past, for your actions, so you can move forward, right? So you can let that go and move forward and heal, which is very important. You also may need to forgive others. You also may need to forgive others. This is a powerful way of being. A lot of people get hung up on that. I had one client say, I'm okay carrying a little bit of hate in my heart. That's fine if you're willingly doing. That's something you can work on your own. But if you want to move on and you don't want to carry hate or anger or resentment towards another person, you may wish to forgive them. And you don't have to forgive them face to face. Maybe they've passed already and you can't physically do it. A lot of times I tell my client, you don't have to tell them you're forgiving them, but you do in your own heart and in your own way. If you are able to forgive them, then you will be able to move forward, which is what you want. One technique that I will share that I find extraordinarily helpful is the Ho'oponopono. The Ho'oponopono, which is a Hawaiian mantra and prayer, which is very simple, but very powerful. I am sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. And I love you. I am sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. And I love you. It can be very difficult to forgive others. It can be even more difficult to forgive yourself. But I will say this, it is a superpower and will unlock new levels in your life if you're able to do it. Now, here is the brutal truth about failure. Failures are catalysts for growth. Failures are opportunities for growth. Failures are valuable lessons that inform and teach us soul expansion so that we can become the fullest expression of ourselves. There's so many examples that I could go into. One, I will mention, this is in some ways trivial, but it was very impactful in my life. So one of my failures when I was competing in golf, on the beginning side of competition, so just starting out in competition really, my experience involved shanking a shot during a playoff in a local junior tournament. Now, I had never been in that situation before, and under pressure, more pressure than I had ever been under, my skill level was not able to rise to the moment, and I hit the most embarrassing shot. Now, my inner critic was very hard. I have a really great inner critic. I was exposed, right? This imposter, what did it say? Like I sucked. I felt embarrassed. I was so angry at myself for my failure. I'm standing alone all alone in front of all these people, and I looked, in my mind, like a complete ass clown, and I was ashamed. These were like very awful feeling emotions, and I was probably 14, maybe 15 at the time, something like that. But you know what? It was one of my first tournaments of consequence, and I made it into the playoff. I think I broke 80 for the first time, but maybe it was like 80, which was my, at that time, low round. So in a lot of ways, this experience was a monumental success for me. The fact that I even got into this playoff to make the cut was really a big deal. I didn't see it like that for a long time. I got so angry at myself. However, the failure, what it did do is it made me work very hard and practice until eventually I was nearly the medalist, I believe, the following year. So that's when you shoot the low round for qualifying. And I can't remember if I was tied or just one off. But that failure led to that. Now, I did not handle that in a great way. The way that I practiced, I was very harsh. Like in my mind, for a long time, the way that I viewed things was you had to punish yourself to be successful. Part of that was the whole 1992 Olympics, no pain, no gain. I bought into that. I've since changed how I view that in performance. But that failure paid dividends in the long run, and I'm still talking about it. So I'm fortunate. I know a lot of successful people in various disciplines, whether it's athletics or creative pursuits, business, and I'm blessed in that way. I'm very blessed in that way. So I've been able to see other people, how they handle things. One of the lessons that I've learned from them is that they have some of the greatest stories about failure. And they see obstacles as challenges to be overcome. If you present a challenge, they try to figure out 20 ways to figure it out. They're not getting stuck. And when they do fail, and who that is successful has not failed. If you have somebody in mind or whatever, then put something down in the comments, because I haven't seen it. They don't let their failures define them. They motivate them. But work harder. Find a way to get through it. If you are shipwrecked and you have had, and now I do want to be clear, people have some devastating losses. There are some serious traumas and things that happen in life. People have been victimized. I'm not saying that those things don't happen. And I talk about golf, it's not the same as going through a bad divorce or losing someone close to you in your life or having some other unforeseen loss in your life. So there's a spectrum of all of these things. One thing that is consistent, though, is that you can find a way to get through all of them no matter what. And that's important to know. So I do want to give a shout out to the Movement is Medicine podcast with the gentlemen, Dr. Gene, Dr. Corey, and Dr. Megan from Recharge Fitness in Ellicott City. And on their podcast, they had asked about mindfulness, and I was sharing through one of my advanced teacher trainings through the lovely people at UCSD with Dr. Patricia Rockman, who's a renowned mindfulness teacher. And as we had gone through this training, they put you through the ringer, and they really force you to pay attention to your stuff, because if you're going to be teaching mindfulness, you have to have worked on your stuff. You will do your clients a disservice if you have not paid attention or put effort into working on all the things that we all have to work on. Therapists and coaches are not immune to that, which you will see in your life and through people around you. But as we were graduating this class and kind of moving on to teach and become mindfulness teachers, one of the things that I will never forget that she said to us is, you will fail. You will let people down. You will let yourself down. Go make glorious mistakes. Now, great advice. Some of the best advice I've ever received. I absolutely hated hearing it at the time because I knew she was right. I knew intuitively then, right? If you want to be good at this, and you're going to have to go into the arena and you're going to make mistakes. You're going to get hit. You're going to stumble. You're going to fall. These are all things that will have to happen. It's tough when you're on the beginning end of that. Okay, I want to be great, but how do I do it? You're going to have to make a lot of mistakes. It's tough to hear, but it's the best stuff to hear because you know that's the path. You can choose how to work with failure and how to work with difficulty. It's within you. If you can be kind to yourself and compassionate and curious and non-judgmental as you work through failure, you will become better. You will continue to grow. You will continue to expand. And so I share this. I named my practice Journey Mindfulness because it's a journey, right? There is no there. It's not like I'm done making mistakes. I am still making mistakes and make them all the time. It doesn't mean I'm not trying to have fun doing it, right? If you are reading this or listening to this, and if you have failed, and if you are alive, then you should have failed at something at this point. George Mumford said this, who was the mindfulness teacher to Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, and those famous Bulls and Lakers teams. Don't be hating on yourself. Don't be hating on yourself. Be kind and remember that you are alive. Be grateful. That's a beautiful thing. And this is the essence of full catastrophe living. The absurdity of all of it, the great successes, loves, victories, right? And also these failures. It's the full catastrophe living. Great book by Dr. John Kabat-Zinn. So may these words, this guide serve you well as you overcome whatever challenges is before you now. And I wish you all great success and hope that you become the full expression of your beautiful soul in this life on your journey. See you next time.